The gun was already in Josslyn's hand when she realized there was no time left to think. Brick had Brennan in his sights, his body tense and ready to move, and the warehouse air felt frozen in a single stretched second. Josslyn stepped out of the shadows, her heart slamming so hard it hurt, and she did the unthinkable. She aimed at her own uncle and pulled the trigger. The sound shattered the night, raw and final, and Brick collapsed with a cry of pain he never saw coming. In that instant Josslyn crossed a line she had sworn she would never approach, driven by fear, loyalty, and a truth she barely understood herself. She stood there shaking, smoke curling from the barrel, staring at the man who had once taught her how to protect herself. Brick had always been the one who watched from the edges, the fixer who cleaned up other people's messes and never hesitated when action was required. Yet now he lay on the ground wounded because she believed Brennan's life mattered more. Brennan staggered back, shock written across his face, unable to decide whether he had just been saved or doomed. Josslyn could not answer that question either. All she knew was that everything had already gone too far. Long before that moment, before blood-stained concrete and loyalties exploded into violence, Josslyn had felt something was wrong. It began as a quiet unease that followed her through Port Charles, a sense that conversations stopped when she entered a room and that people she trusted were hiding pieces of themselves. She had learned to recognize that feeling during her training with the WSB, the instinct that told her when a lie was close. It was the same instinct that had drawn her toward Brick in the first place. Josslyn had gone to Brick asking for help, framing it as curiosity and concern. She wanted him to investigate Brennan and Cullum, to dig into their recent moves and uncover what they were really planning. Officially, she claimed it was about work, about understanding her superior and his alliances. Unofficially, it was about her mother. Josslyn had begun to suspect that Brennan and Cullum were circling Carly, using her connections and her emotional history with Sonny as leverage. The idea that her mother might be a target made Josslyn reckless, willing to open doors that should have stayed shut. Brick took the job without much hesitation. He always did. He trusted Josslyn and believed she was acting to protect her family. What Josslyn did not tell him was how tangled her own position really was. She was not just an observer or a concerned daughter. She was already deep inside Brennan's world, working for him, answering his calls, and following orders that came stamped with the authority of the WSB. That secret weighed on her every time she looked at Carly, knowing they were both lying to each other while believing they were acting out of love. Carly had her own secrets, carefully guarded behind sharp wit and practiced confidence. She had not told Josslyn about her relationship with Brennan, the stolen moments and quiet conversations that had grown into something that felt dangerously real. Carly believed she was in control, that she could separate emotion from strategy, even as she allowed Brennan closer than anyone else in years. She told herself it was private, that her daughter did not need to know. She never imagined that Josslyn was hiding something just as explosive. The irony was cruel. Mother and daughter moved through the same spaces, both connected to Brennan, both convinced they were protecting each other through silence. Each believed the other was safer not knowing the truth. And Brennan stood at the center of it all, a man whose charm made lies feel like kindness and whose orders blurred the line between duty and manipulation. Everything shifted the night Josslyn overheard the conversation between Brennan and Cullum. She had not planned to spy. She had simply been in the wrong place at the right time, hidden just enough to hear Brennan's voice drop into something colder and more calculating. He admitted to Cullum that his romance with Carly was an act, a performance designed to extract information about Sonny. Every word felt like a blade, not just because of what it meant for Carly, but because of what it revealed about Brennan himself. Josslyn listened in horror as Brennan spoke about trust as a tool and affection as a means to an end. Cullum's presence loomed large in the conversation, his questions sharp and probing, his interest clearly dangerous. Josslyn understood then that Cullum was not just a superior officer, but a potential threat. Someone who enjoyed control too much and asked the wrong questions with too much interest. She slipped away before she was discovered, her mind racing with the weight of what she had heard. What Josslyn did not know was that Carly had her own revelations. Carly had already learned that Josslyn was working for the WSB and that Brennan was the one who had recruited her. The knowledge terrified her, not only because of the danger, but because it confirmed her worst fear that Brennan had woven himself into her family on purpose. Carly kept this discovery to herself, choosing silence again, convinced she could handle the situation better alone. Josslyn was equally in the dark about another devastating truth. She still believed that killing Cyrus had been an accident of circumstance, a terrible moment that Brennan had helped her survive. She did not know it had been a trap, carefully constructed to leave her with no choice but to accept WSB protection and employment. Brennan had turned her guilt into leverage, binding her to him with gratitude and fear. Every time he spoke about loyalty and sacrifice, she heard reassurance instead of control. Even Brennan was not as certain of his footing as he appeared. Beneath his confidence was a growing suspicion that Cullum was the real enemy. Cullum's interest in Carly had sharpened, his scrutiny of Brennan's actions becoming relentless. Brennan began to fear that Carly would be used against him, or worse, eliminated if she became inconvenient. That fear drove him to make a surprising decision. He ordered Josslyn to step away from the WSB, to leave before Cullum could tighten his grip. To Josslyn, the order felt like proof of Brennan's care. She believed he was protecting her, especially now that Cullum was more visible and more powerful than ever. She saw his concern as genuine, never questioning whether it also served his own agenda. The fact that she was Carly's daughter only deepened her trust. In Josslyn's mind, Brennan was risking his career to keep her safe. Brennan had no idea that Carly was already moving against him. Hurt and furious after learning pieces of the truth, Carly had secretly allied herself with Valentine. She told herself it was strategic, a necessary move to protect her family and reclaim control. The feelings she still had for Brennan became something she wore like a mask, hiding betrayal behind tenderness. Brennan remained unaware that the woman he thought he was shielding was preparing to destroy him. The web of deception tightened further when Brick's investigation reached a critical point. Brick uncovered evidence that confirmed Brennan had lied to Carly and that Sonny was the true target. To Brick, the conclusion was obvious. Brennan was dangerous and needed to be stopped. He began planning a direct move, considering an attack or even a kidnapping to neutralize Brennan before more damage could be done. When Josslyn learned what Brick intended to do, panic overtook her. She replayed everything Brennan had done for her, the way he had cleaned up Cyrus's death, the hours of training that had given her purpose, the order that told her to leave before things got worse. She could not reconcile that image with the monster Brick described. In her heart, Brennan was flawed but protective, manipulative but caring. Cullum was the true villain in her story. Guilt gnawed at her. She believed she had set this disaster in motion by asking Brick to investigate in the first place. Now the man who had guided her into this dangerous world was about to be taken by force, possibly killed. Josslyn decided she had to stop it, no matter the cost. She followed Brick that night, her instincts screaming that everything was wrong. The confrontation unfolded faster than she expected, words turning into threats, threats turning into weapons. When Brick raised his gun toward Brennan, Josslyn acted without thinking. Her training took over, her emotions narrowing into a single desperate choice. That choice left Brick bleeding and Brennan alive, but nothing about the situation felt resolved. As sirens echoed in the distance and Brennan stared at Josslyn with a mix of gratitude and fear, the weight of her actions settled over her. She had protected a man she believed in, but she had also shattered whatever remained of her old life. The lies she carried were heavier than ever, and the truth waited just beyond reach, ready to tear everything apart. The moment after the gunshot stretched into something unreal. Brick lay motionless except for the shallow rise of his chest, blood spreading across the concrete in a dark, uneven pattern. Josslyn stood frozen with the gun still raised, her arms trembling as the echo faded. Brennan moved first, rushing toward her and gripping her wrist just enough to lower the weapon without drawing attention to it. His touch was grounding and terrifying at the same time. Sirens wailed somewhere far away, growing louder with every passing second. Brennan pulled Josslyn behind a stack of crates, his voice low and urgent as he told her to breathe and focus. He pressed a cloth against Brick's wound, shouting orders into his phone to make sure help was diverted away from the warehouse. Josslyn watched him work with calm precision, and that only deepened her confusion. This was the man she believed in, the man who trained her and protected her. Yet the image of him coldly speaking to Cullum replayed in her mind, impossible to erase. Brick was conscious enough to look at her. His eyes held shock first, and then something closer to hurt. He tried to speak, but Brennan told him to save his strength. Josslyn wanted to apologize, to explain everything at once, but the words would not come. She knew nothing she said could undo what she had done. When the immediate danger passed, and Brick was taken away under Brennan's careful orchestration, the silence that followed felt heavier than the gunshot. Josslyn sat on the floor, her back against the wall, staring at her hands as if they belonged to someone else. Brennan crouched in front of her and told her she had done the right thing. He said Brick would live. He said Cullum would never know what really happened. He said she was safe. Those words should have comforted her. Instead, they sounded rehearsed. Josslyn nodded anyway because she was too tired to argue. Brennan escorted her out through a side exit and into the night, making sure she was unseen. He told her to go home and rest, promising they would talk soon. She watched him disappear into the darkness, feeling more alone than she ever had. At home, Josslyn scrubbed her hands until her skin burned. Sleep would not come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Brick falling and heard the crack of the gun. She wondered if she had just become the kind of person she used to fear. Somewhere deep inside, a small voice asked whether Brennan had truly deserved saving. Carly felt that something was wrong the moment she saw Josslyn the next morning. Her daughter moved like a ghost, quiet and withdrawn, flinching at sudden sounds. Carly wanted to demand answers but held back, choosing instead to watch and wait. She was already balancing too many secrets, already planning her next move with Valentine. She told herself there would be time to talk later. That time came sooner than expected. News reached Carly through whispered channels that Brick had been injured during an altercation connected to Brennan. The details were vague, but enough to set off alarms. Carly confronted Brennan, her anger sharp and immediate. Brennan denied nothing but revealed little, offering reassurance and half-truths that only fueled her suspicion. As Carly pressed him, Brennan began to realize that control was slipping away. Cullum was closing in, Brick was wounded, and Josslyn was unraveling. For the first time, Brennan questioned whether his careful manipulation had gone too far. He told Carly that he needed her trust more than ever, that enemies were circling. Carly listened with a practiced expression, hiding the fact that she was already working against him. Cullum made his move shortly after. He summoned Brennan for a private meeting, his tone polite but his eyes cold. Cullum revealed that he knew more than Brennan expected, hinting at surveillance and intercepted communications. He spoke of loyalty and consequences, making it clear that Brennan was no longer beyond reach. Brennan left the meeting certain that Cullum was indeed the enemy he feared. Faced with mounting pressure, Brennan made a decision that surprised even himself. He went to Josslyn and told her everything he could without fully incriminating himself. He admitted that his relationship with Carly had begun as a strategy, but claimed it had become real. He confessed that Cullum was dangerous and that the WSB was compromised. He begged Josslyn to trust him one last time. Josslyn listened in silence. When he finished, she asked him a single question. Was Cyrus ever meant to die? Brennan did not answer right away. That pause was all she needed. The truth settled over her like a weight crushing her chest. She realized then that her loyalty had been built on lies from the very beginning. Carly's confrontation with Valentine reached its breaking point at the same time. Valentine revealed information that confirmed Brennan's manipulation of Josslyn and his role in orchestrating events around Cyrus. Carly felt a wave of guilt, so intense it stole her breath. She had believed she was protecting her daughter by staying silent. Instead, she had left Josslyn vulnerable. Mother and daughter finally faced each other without secrets between them. The conversation was raw and painful. Josslyn confessed everything about her work with the WSB and the shooting. Carly admitted her alliance with Valentine and her deception toward Brennan. They cried and argued and slowly found their way back to each other. For the first time, they stood on the same side. Together they decided that Brennan could not be allowed to continue unchecked. They also knew Cullum posed an even greater threat. The only path forward was exposure. Carly used her connections while Josslyn drew on her training, carefully gathering evidence that tied Cullum to corruption within the WSB and revealed Brennan's manipulations. Brick recovered enough to contribute. Despite the betrayal he still felt. He chose to help not for Brennan or the WSB, but for Josslyn. He understood now that she had been used just as he had. His forgiveness was quiet and conditional, but it mattered more to her than words could express. The final confrontation unfolded in public view, where secrets could no longer hide. Evidence was released, alliances exposed, and the carefully built facades collapsed. Cullum was removed in disgrace, his power stripped away. Brennan was arrested, his charm finally failing him as the truth came out piece by piece. Josslyn watched as Brennan was led away, feeling grief and relief tangled together. He met her eyes one last time, and in them she saw regret that might have been real. It no longer mattered. What mattered was that the cycle had been broken. In the aftermath, Josslyn stepped away from the world of espionage, choosing a path that allowed her to rebuild without constant deception. Carly stood by her side, determined to earn back the trust they had both risked losing. Their bond emerged scarred but stronger, forged by truth instead of silence. Port Charles slowly returned to its familiar rhythm, but nothing was quite the same. Josslyn carried the memory of the night. She pulled the trigger as a reminder of how easily love and loyalty could be twisted. She also carried the knowledge that she had survived and learned and chosen a different future. The story ended not with victory or defeat, but with clarity. Lies had unraveled, masks had fallen, and those who remained were forced to face who they truly were. In that reckoning, Josslyn found something she had been searching for all along. Not forgiveness from others, but forgiveness from herself.